Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, January 16th, 2026. What is a national consumption tax, and how does it differ from the income tax? That's the title of an article that appeared in USA Today on January 4th, 2026. While the mainstream press has a long history of being biased against the fair tax, this article was much more balanced. Now, here's some of the points that article made. A consumption tax is a tax on goods and services. It taxes what you spend rather than what you earn. In the United States, consumption taxes come in the form of retail sales taxes and excise taxes. Now, that's a tax imposed on certain goods or activities like alcohol or fuel, as well as tariffs. A national consumption tax would create a federal tax on consumer goods, possibly to be emphasized over or even replace income and payroll taxes, which fund Social Security, Medicare, and other government programs. Other countries like Japan have a 7.8% standard and a 6.24% reduced tax rate for items like food, drink, and some newspapers. Over 175 countries, including all of Europe, impose a value-added tax, which taxes goods and services at each stage of production. Consumption taxes in the United States are on a state-by-state basis. Almost every state imposes a state sales tax. The exceptions are Alaska, Delaware, Montana, New Hampshire, and Oregon, which instead allow cities to charge a local sales tax. California boasts the country's highest state sales tax rate at 7.25%. The Fair Tax Act would eliminate most current federal taxes in favor of a 23% federal sales tax. And according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, the fair tax was first introduced in Congress in 1999 and has been reintroduced in each Congress since. In other words, you can probably expect more fair tax legislation in the future. In conclusion, while the article wasn't an in-depth analysis of the fair tax per se, it is an indicator that President Trump's pronouncements about ending the income tax are being taken more seriously by the national media. The fact this article was published at all shows that a national consumption tax is being considered as a viable alternative to the president income payroll tax system. They even mentioned that it might lead to the elimination of the payroll tax, which of course the fair tax does. Now, as you know, the fair tax, a national retail sales tax on new retail goods and retail services, provides a family credit so that all purchases up to the poverty level for each family are not taxed. There's no withholding from your paycheck, and you never have to file a tax return telling the government how much you earned or how much you spent ever again, and you'll never be harassed by the IRS ever again because the fair tax abolishes the IRS. Now, many of you have labored tirelessly for freedom from the federal income tax and the IRS. You deserve a great deal of credit for your efforts to educate the American people on the need to fund the American government in a way that's good for America and that returns freedom to the American people. It's imperative, though, that we don't replace the current income tax and the IRS with an alternative system that can still be manipulated by the ruling elite. We must let Congress and the President know that the best way to replace the income tax and the IRS is with the fair tax. Now, make no mistake about it. The fair tax is a grave threat to the ruling elites. It will strip them of their power and their ability to control us through the tax system. Their opposition to the fair tax will be fierce and unrelenting, and don't think for an instant they won't use half-truths, deception, and downright lies in their desperate attempt to hang on to their power. However, with the support of this president, we can finally eliminate the income tax and the IRS. Now, of course, the best course of action is not only to repeal the income tax and abolish the IRS, but to repeal the 16th Amendment as well so that no future administration can ever shackle the American people with an income tax again. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. This will take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance, and we need your grassroots assistance. Now, if you have contacts that will allow us to get more information about the fair tax to President Trump, please let us know. Also, please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. Now, if your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system in the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing, or actually investing, $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.